The tale kicked off with Akane Nishino, a dazzling actress whose day began in style with a fancy car driving her to school. She was adored by many, but her day took an unexpected turn when she crossed paths with her least favorite person, Minoru Kajino. He kept getting her name wrong, even after she corrected him. Finally, he mustered up an apology. Beneath Akane's graceful exterior lay a hidden past, carefully shielded from prying eyes. She maintained a pleasant demeanor to avoid conflict with her classmates. When her chauffeur didn't pick up, she took matters into her own hands and set out on foot. Little did she know, this decision would lead her into a perilous trap set by kidnappers. As darkness closed in, the last face she glimpsed was Minoru's. In a sudden twist of fate, Akane regained consciousness in captivity. Her captors demanded a hefty ransom for her release. It was a nightmare scenario. But then, like a hero from the shadows, Minoru appeared, now masked as the ruffian slayer. He swiftly took down the captors, saving Akane and leaving them with a stern warning. The next day, Minoru addressed Akane correctly, deepening their connection. She unraveled his secret identity. Tragedy struck when news reports announced Minoru's tragic accident and apparent demise. But destiny had other plans. Minoru found himself reborn in a strange new world. Here, he was determined to face his fears head-on, striving to become greater than he ever was. Craving powers beyond the ordinary, Minoru gathered a group of individuals who had gained magical abilities. Together, they formed an organization, preparing for a monumental mission. Alpha faithfully reported to Sid, now known as Sid, confirming that every one of his visions had materialized. This encompassed the discovery of ancient texts, veiled in cryptic references to an enigmatic being known as Diablos. In a vivid flashback, Sid reminisced about his rebirth as Baron Kajino's heir. The Kajino lineage was renowned for cultivating formidable dark knights, their might augmented by an adeptness in the arcane arts. While Claire, his gifted elder sister, had attracted attention and expectations, Sid purposefully lingered in the shadows, masking his true potential. By night, he clandestinely combated brigands with astonishing proficiency in both magic and swordplay, accumulating wealth and treasures. On one fateful night, Sid had chanced upon a creature afflicted with magic, whom he had taken in for study. Within a month, he had successfully subdued the magical surge, unveiling the creature's authentic form. An elf. Sid had cunningly simulated breaking the elf's curse, unveiling the existence of true heroes who battled Diablos, and warning of a cult's scheme to resurrect the demon. Adopting the moniker Shadow, Sid had enlisted the elf, now known as Alpha, as his companion, establishing the organization Shadow Garden. 3 years hence, Claire had vanished while preparing for the Midgar Academy. Beta, Sid's ally, had informed him that Alpha was on a quest to locate Claire, potentially abducted by a high-ranking member of the Diablos cult. Shadow Garden had subsequently pinpointed the secret lair. Viscount Grease, who had sought information on Sid, had been holding Claire in confinement. Though Claire had briefly managed to break free, she had been overpowered. Alpha had inflicted severe wounds upon Grease, who had fled after consuming a strength-enhancing elixir. Grease had encountered Shadow, culminating in a one-sided skirmish that concluded in Grease's defeat. On the following day, as Claire had left for the Midgar Academy, Alpha went on and disclosed to Sid that it was time for them to go their separate ways. The revelation left Sid in a state of astonishment. Enrolling at Midgar Academy at the tender age of 15, Sid skillfully navigated the halls, opting to maintain a low profile while cultivating meaningful connections with Hyoro and Jaga. However, a miscalculated test yielded an unexpected consequence. He found himself compelled to confess his feelings to the widely adored Alexia Midgar. Bracing for a harsh rejection, Sid was taken aback when Alexia not only accepted his confession, but also kindled rumors about his newfound reputation. Sharing a lunch table with him, she defied convention by venturing into the less frequented lower section. Though Sid had initially wished to dissuade Alexia's interest, he found himself inadvertently eating with a lack of grace, yet she remained unfazed. She expressed a keenness to learn Royal Bushin fencing alongside him and aided him in joining Section 1, overseen by Zenon Griffey, the official fencing instructor. While practicing, Sid couldn't help but recognize Alexia's proficient technique, even if it lacked a certain flair. Upon overhearing Alexia proclaim herself as his girlfriend, Sid confronted her, suspecting she might be using him to evade her engagement to Zenon. Despite the ensuing tension, Alexia compelled Sid to uphold the charade. As time passed, Alexia privately disparaged Zenon to Sid, During a train journey, she observed Sid's uncharacteristically aggressive and unrefined fencing style. She confided in her aspiration to emulate her sister, Iris, earning her the moniker the Fencer Ordinaire. Sid, acknowledging his own moral complexities, clarified his appreciation for what others might disdain, applauding Alexia's distinctive fencing prowess. Their train ride concluded, and Alexia bid him farewell. Subsequently, both Hyoro and Jaga extended their apologies for their inadvertent involvement in his predicament. At the school gate, Zenon and his cohorts confronted Sid, Hyoro, and Jaga, accusing Sid of being the last seen with Alexia before her disappearance. Awakening in a dismal cell, Alexia found herself bound and faced with a grotesque cellmate. Before long, a sinister doctor entered, harboring plans to extract her blood for the purpose of resurrecting a malevolent demon. Meanwhile, Sid endured a brutal interrogation, his captors desperate for any trace of Alexia's whereabouts. Strangely, he took a perverse amusement in this newfound role, relishing his unforeseen transition into the shadows, relegated to a mere background figure. Zenon, troubled by guilt over Alexia's abduction, met with Iris and presented dubious evidence that implicated Sid, despite his lower skill level. Ultimately, Iris released Sid but kept a close watch on him. During his homeward-bound train journey, Sid spotted two suspicious figures tailing him. In a crucial encounter, Alpha incapacitated them and whispered about a later rendezvous with Sid. Upon reaching home, Sid discovered Alpha already waiting. They delved into the details of Alexia's kidnapping by the Diablos cult, and although Alpha offered to eliminate those who had interrogated him, Sid insisted they were merely doing their duty. Shadow, unveiling his lavish hideout, welcomed Beta, who unveiled a plan to strike the Fenrir sects with a formidable force. Sid disclosed his intent to take Delta's place in the operation. In a dim alley, Sid confronted two knights attempting to frame and apprehend him, effortlessly dispatching them. Meanwhile, the doctor apprised Alexia of an impending event, but she harbored doubts that the knights would resort to lethal measures without cause. Injecting a serum into the humanoid creature, a dramatic transformation ensued, resulting in the demise of the doctor and Alexia's newfound freedom. Encountering Zenon, he disclosed his involvement in the facility and his intent to secure the 12th seat in the rounds through her blood. A fierce battle ensued, with Zenon deriding Alexia as the fencing ordinaire. As the tension escalated, Sid emerged on the scene, fully assuming his role as Shadow. Zenon, with narrowed eyes, recognized Shadow as the person who'd been going after the cult. He couldn't help but brag about his own strong powers and attacked fiercely, but Shadow easily dodged, making fun of Zenon for boasting. At the same time, a huge, scary thing hovered over the city. The knights quickly got everyone out of there. They tried to fight the creature, but their attacks didn't work. It kept healing itself. Iris showed up and tried to hurt the beast, but it didn't work. Just when things seemed really bad, Alpha showed up and turned the creature back into a person. They said they were part of Shadow Garden. Meanwhile, in Zenon's tough fight with Shadow, he took some red pills and changed, becoming the third awakened. But Shadow was still way stronger. Zenon swung his sword, but it broke when it hit Shadow. Shadow used a powerful move that made a huge hole in the ground, shocking everyone who saw it. The next day, Alexia told Sid about all the crazy stuff that happened and asked about their relationship. But Sid said no, which made Alexia really mad and she attacked them. Later, they found a really awful murder behind the school, and they called it the Bodiless Murder. Meanwhile, the Shadow Garden got a report from Etia that said someone was pretending to be them and taking justice into their own hands. Iris found out about the cult and that Zenon was involved. She put together a new team with Glenn and Marco to investigate. She also showed them a mysterious thing she found and said they needed someone to figure out what it did. In the middle of all this, Sherry Barnett, carrying a bunch of books, ran into Sid, who still looked banged up from Alexia's attack. Hyoro and Jaga asked Sid about his time with Alexia, but it turns out not much important happened. Meanwhile, Iris gave a mysterious thing to Sherry to figure out. She made sure it was kept safe by the tough Crimson Order. Alexia offered to help, and Iris welcomed her. As evening came, Sid, Hyoro, and Jaga stood in line for chocolates. They felt uneasy because of rumors about a dangerous person in the city. Inside the store, Sid met Gamma, who had recreated the shop using his skills. Sid was amazed at how good Gamma was at running the store. He learned about an investigation into someone pretending to be Shadow Garden. Sid acted like he knew the imposter and suspected it might be Alexia. Gamma introduced a new member, Nu. Suddenly, Sid said he had to leave, leaving Hyoro and Jaga behind. Elsewhere, Alexia met two people from Shadow Garden, but Sid, acting as Shadow, stepped in. They got news that they lost contact with their puppets and needed to get something important back. Later, Alexia told Iris that Shadow was working against the cult of Diablos. On the train to school, Hyoro and Jaga tried to impress girls with chocolates, but it didn't go so well. Sid, on a whim, gave his chocolate to the first girl he saw, which happened to be Sherry. In a surprising twist, Sherry recognized Sid right away. Later at her house, Sherry's dad, Ruslan, explained that the boy who gave her chocolate was probably waiting for her answer. In a sweet moment, father and daughter shared a special connection, and Sherry thanked Ruslan for making her part of his loving family through adoption. Sherry pondered her father's words, savoring the delicious taste of chocolate. New, in disguise, approached Sid at school and shared troubling news about the captured imposter's potent brainwashing, which had yielded no useful information. Meanwhile, Sid grappled with the distraction of being signed up for a fencing tournament by Hyoro without his consent. Sid asked for some time to think and left the conversation with New. At the tournament, Claire secured a victory in her first bout. Sid faced Rose Oriana, the student council president, in the next match. Despite relentless attacks from Rose, Sid refused to give up, surprising her opponent with unwavering determination. Just as Rose prepared to escalate the fight, the referee intervened, saving Sid from Rose's fierce assault, and declared Rose the winner. After leaving school, Sid encountered Sherry, who appreciated his fighting skills and offered him cookies, sparking the beginning of a friendship. Sid briefly conversed with Ruslan before making an excuse and departing due to his injuries. Later, Sherry approached Alexia, informing her that she and Sid had become friends. Alexia struggled with jealousy but hid her feelings. 5 days later, Sid returned to school, noticing a change in how his peers treated him. He was the only one who perceived a masked knight creating a barrier around the school. Alexia arrived and realized the gravity of the situation upon finding the lifeless gatekeeper. Sid discovered he couldn't use his magic, and a group of men, identifying as Shadow Garden, announced their takeover of the academy. In the midst of a battle between Rose and an imposter, Sid heroically shielded Rose from a sword strike, collapsing with blood pouring from his wounds. Rose interpreted Sid's actions as a sign of his secret affection for her, believing this to be the reason he saved her. The imposters gathered all the students in the hall. In an unexpected turn, Sid resurrected himself using the stored blood in his brain. He had used magic to protect his brain and control blood flow throughout his body as a precaution. Meanwhile, Sherry delved into researching the artifact she was given to decipher. When an imposter of Shadow Garden attempted to steal the artifact, Glenn intervened to protect Sherry and guide her to safety. Sid, standing atop a building, surveyed the chaotic scene at the academy. He was exhilarated by the situation and proceeded to take on the imposters single-handedly. During his rampage, Sid spotted Sherry and discreetly aided her as she continued her journey. Eventually, Sid and Sherry found themselves in Ruslan's room, where Sherry shared information about the imposters' artifacts, known as the Pupil of Greed and the Eye of Avarice. These imposters planned to gather the students in the hall to execute them using the Eye of Avarice. Sid decided to retrieve the artifact from Sherry's room to save the students' lives. Glenn and Marco were defeated, and Rex set out to find Sherry but crossed paths with Sid where he met his end. Upon entering the room, Sid encountered New, who disclosed her past engagement to Marco. New informed Sid that Shadow Garden was concealed within the academy, awaiting his orders. Sid involved New in the mission to locate the artifact and shared the information Sherry provided about the Eye of Avarice. In Ruslan's room, Sherry diligently continued her efforts to decipher the artifact. After a significant period of research, Sherry made a crucial discovery. She learned that the Eye of Avarice had the power to save the lives of the students. With this newfound knowledge, Sherry and Sid headed toward the secret passage to the hall. Along the way, Sid offered words of encouragement for Sherry to proceed alone. Unbeknownst to the masked knight, Rex was already deceased, yet the knight awaited his return. Upon reaching the hall's rooftop, Sherry activated the Eye of Avarice, causing the magic barrier to instantly dissipate. Rose and her comrades swiftly retaliated, eliminating several imposters. However, in a sudden twist, Shadow Garden made a dramatic entrance, swiftly dispatching the remaining imposters. Sid observed the masked knight, who vanished into thin air. Flames engulfed the academy, spreading rapidly. As chaos ensued, Iris and her knights arrived at the academy. Amidst the turmoil, Sid encountered the masked knight in Ruslan's room. The knight removed his mask, revealing himself as Ruslan. Ruslan disclosed that Sherry's mother once conducted research in this room. He confessed to murdering Sherry's mother and stealing her research artifacts. In response, Sid transformed into Shadow, engaging in a fierce battle with Ruslan. The confrontation paused briefly, during which Ruslan revealed that Shadow Garden would continue to face adversaries, regardless of Shadow's power. Without hesitation, Shadow proceeded to execute Ruslan in the same manner that Ruslan took the life of Sherry's mother. Sherry, a witness to Shadow's actions, was left in the dark about the details. The following day brought a cloud of blame upon Shadow Garden for the recent events. In the midst of uncertainty, Alpha instructed Gamma to assemble the 7 most important members of Shadow Garden to discuss their future plans. Meanwhile, Sherry bid farewell to Sid as she prepared to depart for her studies abroad. The school had to close for some important repairs after recent events. Sid stayed in his apartment and kept to himself, especially around his caring sister, Claire. Before long, Sid got a message from Alpha about a special place in the city of Lindworm. Alpha needed him urgently, hinting at a big discovery by Shadow Garden. Intrigued, Sid headed to Lindworm. They had a strong bond from a past incident. In a touching memory, it was revealed that Sid had pretended to be hurt to hide his real abilities. This made Rose really care about him, and they eventually got married. Even though Rose loved him a lot, Sid always tried to keep some distance. When they got to Lindworm, Rose got really interested in a famous writer named Natsume, who was actually Beta in disguise. Sid got one of Natsume's books, which had important info about what Shadow Garden was doing. As the date for the goddess trial got closer, Shadow Garden was excited to reveal the hidden story of the hero, Olivier. This would only happen if the trial unlocked one of the 3 gates to the secret realm. He went after them and, using nothing but an ice cream spoon, stopped them. At that moment, Sid saw Epsilon and talked to them, asking how their mission was going. Epsilon said they were moving on to Plan B.